Hi, my name is Emily Nickel. I'm 22 years old and I am a Bachelor of Public Affairs and Policy Management student here at Carleton, specializing in international affairs and minoring in law. I moved to go to school at Carleton from Vancouver, so I'm originally from BC. And I was asked to speak today because apparently it isn't obvious, or a lot of my friends don't know, or something that I haven't really made clear to people is that I'm technically a disabled person. I have an artificial leg. I had an amputation when I was 12. And I will just talk a little bit about that. So I was born with a condition called tibial hemimelia. It's very rare. And it means that my tibia bone didn't fully develop when I was a child. And so my foot grew, it was malformed when I was born. Or deformed, I guess. And although there were several attempts to try and straighten it out when I was a kid, they weren't very successful, and they actually ended up giving me other health complications, so they weren't continued. And so I grew up with a big leg brace that I walked around with. It was hard to run, it was a little bit difficult to walk, it was very obvious that there was something wrong. And I never really was one of those little girls that was, scared of what people would say or kind of shied behind, this big obvious thing. My parents were very wonderful, my friends were wonderful, nobody ever made it into a big deal, but there was always a notion that I was a little bit different from other people. So when I was 12, I was given the opportunity to see a pediatric surgeon at the Children's Hospital in BC, and they gave me two options. They said I could have my leg amputated now at the age of 12, or I could have it amputated when I turned 30. And they said it was probably better to have it done now because I'd learn how to walk and drive and run and do things at the age of 12 rather than having to relearn them at the age of 30. So I did opt to have my leg amputated when I was 12, and I did do that off my own volition. There wasn't any influence from my parents or my doctors or anything. They gave me the full ability to make the decision myself, and so I did. And I remember waking up when I was, after the surgery. The very first thing that I saw was a hot pink cast, and my dad had signed it already. And it was kind of jarring because you don't really expect to wake up at the age of 12 without a limb. But I did, and I knew that I had made that decision myself. I hadn't been influenced in any way by my doctors or by my parents. It was entirely my decision. And knowing that, I still felt very sorry for myself when I woke up from surgery. Not too sure why, probably because there was a very big difference with me. And I just thought, my friends are going to look at me differently. How am I ever going to learn how to walk? How am I going to learn how to drive? How am I going to learn how to do anything? Like walk in high heels was a big deal for me back then. And so I just felt very sorry for myself. I was very down on myself. And when you're in the hospital for an extended period of time, you're expected to go to school to maintain your studies. And so I did go to school. And I sat beside two girls one day, and we were learning math, and they were very sweet, they were very nice. They talked to me, and they made me feel welcome, and, we talked about things that, 12-year-old girls talk about. And it was a new experience for me because one of the girls had leukemia, and she was very open about the fact that she was going to die very soon. She knew she wasn't going to live for much longer. She had no hair or anything like that. And the other girl who sat to my left had no legs at all. She had had her legs amputated from the hips down, so she was confined to a wheelchair likely for the rest of her life, and learning how to walk would be very difficult for her. And it was kind of eye-opening for me because I had always felt very sorry for myself coming out of surgery. All I really had was half of my leg was amputated below the knee. It wasn't really a big deal in comparison to these girls that were sitting beside me who had such a positive outlook on life. And it really kind of opened my eyes as to how I should perceive myself and my own abilities. And after that time, after I did rehabilitation and I learned how to walk and that kind of thing, so I went back to school and everything. And I remember when I was 15, it was the first time that I had ever really encountered somebody trying to define me in a way that I didn't believe I was definable, I guess. So I went for a piano exam. I'd always been a piano player. So I had my grade 6 piano exam, and I had learned how to play the pedal with my left foot, the sustained pedal as you're supposed to. But you're supposed to use your right foot in Royal Conservatory, and that had been the leg that was amputated, and I didn't think it would be a big problem that I had learned how to play with my left foot, just it didn't really make a difference. And so I went into my piano exam, sat down on the bench, and I told the piano examiner, I'm very sorry, but I have an artificial leg and I'm going to be playing with my left foot today. I hope that's okay. And instead of being considerate and compassionate and nice and understanding about the fact that a 15-year-old girl was sitting there without a leg, she looked at me and she said, oh, well, if I would have known there was a disabled girl coming to see me, I would have ordered a disabled piano. And she kept repeating that word at me. She kept calling me disabled. And it was the first time that somebody had ever actually used that word with me. My parents had never said it. My doctors had never said it. School had never said it to me. And it was almost like a slap in the face, because I was sitting on a piano bench, ready to play the piano, same as other kids outside the door. And this woman was sitting there calling me disabled, basically telling me that I was different from everybody else, and that I couldn't play in the same way as everybody else. She knew nothing about me. She knew nothing about the sports I played. She knew nothing about my life except the fact that I was sitting there ready to play a grade 6 piano exam for her, which I did. And that was kind of another eye-opening experience, I guess, for me, because it really made me realize that this woman had no idea who I was, and yet she felt that she was fully within her right and her ability to define what I could do and what I couldn't do in comparison to, regular-bodied people or able-bodied people. And the funny thing is that people usually can't even tell that I have an artificial leg, not until I tell them at least, because it just isn't obvious. I've had such good rehabilitation that it hasn't ever been a problem. And it's ironic to me that people still define me as disabled and try to define my abilities based on this, one medical fact, when I would consider my disability to be the most, to be the thing that's given me the most ability in the world. Because without having my leg amputated, I wouldn't have been able to do so many things that I do today. I wouldn't be able to walk in high heels. I wouldn't be able to drive a car. I wouldn't be able to go to the gym, everything which I do. And I think it's something that's societally reinforced, that people with a physical disability or something that's obvious, and I can't speak on behalf of all disabilities, obviously, but I can speak on my own behalf, is that the biggest disability that I've ever had to overcome is the idea that I'm not able to do certain things because people think that I can't do them, but knowing that I can do them and knowing that there's people that I have to prove wrong really does give you more of a drive to get over things. I would argue that people with physical disabilities have to overcome a lot more, simply based on the societally reinforced ideas of what they can and can't do and the parameters that are placed on them even before they've been met. And I think it's really important for us to reconsider what it means to be disabled and what the difference between the objective fact of me having a disability and what having ability actually means. And so I guess my words of inspiration would be, don't be defined.